Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah Macintyre, episode 31. And today's podcast, although I'm tentatively giving it to you because we all know what happens on this podcast, we don't stay on topic. But today's podcast is titled so far, Lessons Learned in a Spiritual Business. And we'll see if we stick to it. But first things first, Eddie, I found your email. Apologies for that. So Eddie has written in and he says, "Hi Hannah, I wonder if the spirit world are aware of what is going on with our own mental health in our physical life. I ask as an adult with Asperger's condition and other neurodiversity conditions. When I am in circle and developing mediumship, I don't have the same communication issues I have the rest of my real life. It's as if things are gently moved to the side for the time period of working within mediumship. I also don't have the same internal chatter that neurotypical people have, obviously a bonus. I'm at a stage when I'm really at ease to discuss my mental health issue from my perspective and with regards to my own mediumship development. To recap the question, will the souls in the spirit world who work with us be aware of our own mental health issues?" So, yes, I believe they will. I believe that your soul chose to incarnate here with I don't want to say barriers, because there's a lot of amazing things about being Aspergic. So I don't want to say barriers, but with that type of being that type of person, your soul chose that. So of course your guides, your spirit team, I believe also are aware of that and are working with you in that always. And like you say, there are benefits to it. My God, I would love not to have the internal chatter. I would love it. I've worked with people with Asperger's and other types of autism in their mediumship development. And what I will say in my very limited experience of it so far is they are far more fact-based in their mediumship than fluffy. And there's nothing wrong with being fluffy or fact-based in your mediumship. You have to be evidential with it, obviously. But I find that rather than getting immersed in the emotions of it, they prove the existence of the spirit in a different way, and not necessarily in a bad way. So you guys will have heard me say before that I think it's important to look at the medium that you're booking in with and work out if that medium's style of mediumship is the style of mediumship that you want for your reading. There's no point booking with me, for example, if you just want a list of hollow facts. I'm not that girl. That's never going to be me just belting out. Of course, I'm evidential and I want to work with evidence, but my preferred way of working is building the presence of that person, reminding you of who they were and how they are and what they want to speak about, rather than they lived at number 36, for example. Now, some of you that will resonate with, and some of you are like, what's the point in that? I want undeniable evidential proof. And so again, it's about allowing yourself to be the medium that you want to be, and it's about sitters feeling empowered to pick the medium they want to work with. So in some respects, Eddie, you will find certain things harder than a neurotypical person, and then in other respects you will find that you are better at things than a neurotypical person. And actually, if I'm honest, I don't think that comes from or is specific to your Asperger's. I think that comes and is specific to being an individual in your mediumship. So there is mediumship that I have seen that I have thought was great mediumship, but not how I want to do mediumship. And there has been mediumship that I have seen that I have been amazed by and aspire to. And that will be different for me than it is for you. and different for somebody else than it is for us, etc., etc. And that's how it should be. This is what we need to be embracing in spirituality, is not one size fits all. So I'm really glad that you are finding a way to communicate with spirit and not allowing your Asperger's to be a barrier to it. And it's the same for everybody. I'm not belittling living with Asperger's, and I hope it doesn't sound like that, but I think everybody has different crosses that they have to bear and different things that they have to learn to work through and with. That is the mediumship self-development journey. So yeah, I think the souls in the spirit world are aware of where you're at emotionally and also where you're at in your belief system. And this is something that I've mentioned before, but this is why I can't contact all of the people that don't believe in the spirit world and just prove the existence of the spirit world to them. Wouldn't that be something if I could get a real naysayer in front of me and just go, here's undeniable evidence? But as you know from listening to this podcast, people have to be in the right space to receive. It's not pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It's an emotional and healing and energetic experience being a sitter. And some people aren't ready for it. And if they're not ready for it, the spirit world are not going to pop in with jazz hands going ta-da, because they know that person isn't ready for it. So I believe that the spirit world are acutely aware of where everybody's at with mental health issues, but also readiness to receive a message, readiness to hear from that person. And I know we've mentioned this before, but good examples include things like you really want to hear from your dad in the spirit world, but your grandfather comes in for your first reading. And yeah, there'll be a part of you that's disappointed. You're great to hear from your grandfather, but you really wanted to hear from your dad. But then there's a part of you that hopefully will understand that maybe your grandfather was the gateway, was the entry point that made it easier for you to be able to receive that message from your dad. Just like sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes I can't get a connection for somebody. And that could be something to do with me and where I'm at, and it could be something to do with them and where they're at. Luckily for me, I think it's only happened twice in 12 years, but it does happen, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to be mindful of that. That is why there has to be the collaboration of somebody booking a reading. That is why I've got a real bee in my bonnet about people not conjuring the spirit world and trying to do a connection on somebody who hasn't asked for it while they're trying to do their food shop, or even when they're trying to have a healing session. I don't believe if someone's booked for Reiki, you should be trying to communicate with their loved ones on the other side, because they haven't signed up for that. They haven't given their permission. So it's a complex and complicated, as it always is. It always is. But it's always interesting. So yeah, I think they're with you. They know what you're experiencing, how you're filtering things. They are finding different ways to work with you. And isn't what this is all about is us all learning from what's been and improving on it and finding different ways and new experiences and new answers and learning that way. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. And I hope that answers your question, Eddie. And much love on your journey. Go for it. And don't think of it as something you need to overcome. Think of your Asperger's as something you need to work with and embrace your uniqueness. That's what I would say to you if you were learning through me. It doesn't make it invalid in some way because you will work differently to the other people you're learning with. In fact, that's your superpower. So there's that bit for you all. And now let's move on to lessons learned in a spiritual business. I just wanted to share some things with you all about if you're thinking of, or perhaps running your own spiritual business or following mediums online, I mean, it is a quagmire. Oh, I wanted a better word than that, but that's the one that stayed, of mediums working these days, and of there's so many to choose from, so many things to look at. And there are certain, I would say, red flags, things that perhaps should be a warning to you. And I know I've talked about some of these before, but we're going to cover them all today. So, where do we begin? You've been doing your practice, you've been doing your work, you are thinking of taking that step out into the big wide world, putting your head above the parapet and offering readings or healing or some sort of spiritual work to the public. Now, hopefully, if you're in that space, you are also in a space where you understand you are not finished. And there is no such thing as ever being spiritually developed. Tick off the box, you are done. You guys who've been on this podcast journey with me from the beginning will know this, because I try and share the learning and the journey as I'm on it. I know before I hopped onto this train, I thought there would be a destination. Now I'm on it, I realise that the journey, the train journey, is the be all and end all, and there will never be an end, and nor would I want them to be. That's why I love spirituality. It never stops. So one of the things that often happens to people when they start a spiritual business is you go from doing a few of, let's say, readings, but it can be healing sessions as well. You go from doing 3 or 4 a week, perhaps in your practice groups and on your guinea pigs, and then you go out to the public to do it as a job. And one of the things, I was very lucky, as you know from the previous podcast, I had a freezer room at home, so I made that into my spiritual space. But one of the things I've noticed in students is that they will go at it wanting to be professional. Now, being professional is a massive passion of mine, absolutely. I'm really stuck in expecting the mediums that I teach and the mediums that I see on social media to behave in a professional manner. But sometimes you have to allow yourself a little bit of space to get started. So for example, you want to start your business, you want to start doing readings, you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated space for it. You can do it I started healing in my living room. I made it nice. I made sure it was tidy. There wasn't piles of washing out on the ironing board there and, crap around. The dog was shut away, things like that. I know somebody once did a healing session and their cat jumped on the person being healed while they were in a lovely trance state, and it was very problematic for the person being healed because it was so shocking. It really caused a problem in their energy. So things like that I think are desperately unprofessional. But you can still do it in your living room and be professional. And the reason I'm starting with that is when people go to get a room, what I see happens is as follows. They get a room, maybe they hire a space, maybe they build a space or decorate a space at home. And in the hiring, the decorating, the kitting it out comes a lot of cost. And in that cost comes a pressure to recoup your costs back, to make it profitable. And also I think for a lot of us, normally in a relationship, there's one person trying to create this business out of something woo-woo and the other partner isn't quite as into it and doesn't really understand it and doesn't quite get it. And then you have this problem because you're trying to prove yourself. And money and finances are a great thing. I'll talk about the greatness of it later, but I'm also going to talk about the problems caused by it. So there's a lot of pressure to put yourself under to start. So I would suggest you try to do what you can to alleviate that pressure. And also that you don't try and bite off more than you can chew straight away, because working for somebody for free is a different energetic space to working for somebody for a fee. and it's more pressure for you, it's more stress for you, you're held more accountable for it. But also, if you're renting a space or anything like that, you might go from doing your 3 to 4 readings a week to, I've got this space for 6 hours, so I need to do 12 readings in that time. And that has a massive energetic impact on you. And one of the biggest problems I see people who begin with having is this, I've got to do so many, and not allowing it to grow gently. They go at it all guns blazing. And I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. When I do a demonstration of mediumship, the next day I am ruined. My whole body aches like I've done some kind of crazy fitness class. I'm foggy headed, I'm exhausted. Because in that 90 minutes, 2 hours of working, I am changing and altering my state, and it's also stressful and nerve-wracking, and it takes some time to recover. So I know that I can't work the day after. It's the same if you're doing readings for people. If you do back-to-back readings, lots and lots, it's too much. And what will happen is, if you decide to follow that path, what I find happens is the spirit world won't stop you, but what they will do is they will keep you on a surface level of your energetic connection and your blending, because they know you can't maintain the level of blending for the really good evidence that you need for a long period of time. So when I was invited to work on a psychic site, they wanted me to commit to 6-hour shifts, and I refused. And I was the only medium, to my knowledge, on that site that said, no, that's not how it works. You need time in between. You can't have back-to-back appointments. You can't work for that length of time. It will kill you. Because people don't talk about what it's really like. And yeah, you're dealing with a business, but that business needs to understand how it works. And then I knew from that moment on, it was never going to be the right place for me. So one of the things I would really suggest is that you don't try and take on loads of clients. Start with 1 or 2 a week. Allow yourself a period of time where you are adjusting to the new frequency of working for paying clients. It's a different energy to your practice groups. So that is something that you really need to process, and you really need to sit with, and you really need to not rush. And as you've heard me say before, I do recommend that everybody that's starting a spiritual business keeps a job in the corporate world. Certainly for the beginning. So it's not that you want to be working on doing readings to pay your bills, because that also causes problems. If you think about, I know for me, let's talk about me here, personal story here. I get really bad migraines. No amount of Reiki or anything seems to fix it. It just seems to be the way I'm built. And they can come out of nowhere. I have to be very, very careful and very mindful of what's going on with my body. Now, what happens often is in the day building up, they normally hit at night to the migraine. I'll feel really foggy headed and out of it. Now, if I'm working and I've got a client, I sometimes have to cancel clients. So I have to leave enough space in my diary to not only to have migraines, but to be able to reschedule people. Because if you're rescheduling somebody, you don't want to reschedule them onto an already busy week. So I leave that kind of space for me. But it's also that if I know that I need to work with that client to pay a bill, where is my integrity in that situation? It's very, very hard to turn away money when you need it, but you know you shouldn't be working. So I always ask people to bear that in mind and keep that in mind, and always allow that freedom. So for most of us, that really looks like, for most of my students, it's doing a day job and then doing a reading in the evening, two evenings a week, something like that, allowing it to build. So don't run in it all guns blazing. I'm manifesting £1,000 for myself in my first month of trading, because you have to learn to sit in that new frequency, to heal. Every single session I do with somebody brings stuff up for me that I then have to reconcile. You have to allow time for that. And I don't want to be rushing through somebody. Often what I find happens in readings, certainly especially when you're doing evidential connections, is that the person will wait till you've finished to then break down, to then want to tell you about their loved one. And I never want to be in a space where I've got to go because I'm aware there's somebody else waiting. I always want to allow enough time to be able to talk about them and remember them and spend time with that person. So for me, I find personally the optimum number of readings to do is 2. It's small, isn't it? 2 a day, and not every day, because obviously I'm working my office job 2 days a week as well. So that's one side of it. Where else do I want to go? Now here's one: authenticity. Authenticity and integrity. Really, really important. Because I've mentioned it the other day, but don't private message people. Don't friend request your clients. That is, if you get a reading from a medium and then they want to be your friend on Facebook, that is weird to me. That is not appropriate. It's a bit, we are not therapists. I would never say that we are therapists. That's completely separate to mediumship. But it is about having that client-therapist kind of relationship. And you shouldn't want to be friends with the people that you are healing. That is a crossed boundary. That makes it weird for them and makes it weird for you. So if you're getting friend requests from mediums, that to me automatically is a red flag. That is something weird to watch out for. You know my thoughts on direct messages as well. They shouldn't need to send them. On the flip side, social media and things like that, social media can kill you. The end. Imagine that, someone coming through a medium, they died from social media, but it can suck the life and the authenticity out of your page. And I have fallen for this. So I mentioned before that I did a social media course with Elise Dharma, and the advice on there was, reply to every comment, make sure you're posting every day, build up this momentum. Now, Elise Dharma's approach works. It absolutely works. Does it work for a spiritual business? I'm not sure, because if you're posting something purely for the sake of posting it, rather than because it really resonates with you and it really lights you up and it's something authentic that you're feeling in that moment, where's the line there? If you're trying to call people to you for your light and your purity and your energy and your, maybe not purity, no one comes to me because I'm pure, but you know what I mean. If you're trying to attract people, you need to be in the energy of, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I'm showing, not over posting. I mean, one of the things really, quotes, and we've all done this. I do this. I did it the other day. I caught myself out on this because we fall into the trap of social media, because we all know that social media's algorithm for businesses is built on the idea that you need to keep building that momentum, keep it going. So if you don't know this, here's a little key for you. Facebook, for example, if you have a post that does really, really well, what they will do is they will then show your next post to more people. So I have got 26,000 followers on Facebook nearly. And what I find happens is my posts are shown on average, if they perform well, to around 2,000 of them. So just because people follow you does not mean they see your stuff. Now, if I have a post that does really well, and by does really well, I mean lots of comments, then my next post will do well as well. Not as well, but well, and so on and so forth. So you're always trying to build that momentum. But if you fall into that trap, you can lose a piece of you. So it's finding that balance, because it is a business and it should make money for you, but it should make money for you the right way. And it's always really hard to find that. It's really, really difficult. And Spirit won't do it for you. That I pay for Facebook advertising. The Spirit don't magically, wondrously put followers in front of me. that's such a disempowering idea. Yes, there are certain people who have been drawn to my page or drawn to this podcast, and hello to you if you're listening, who found it by accident. But most of you will have been searching for mediumship or psychic or something like that. And it's the same with social media. I might ping up in your feed, and that's great if I do, but it's more likely that I've managed to work my way through the algorithm, or I've paid for you to see me. I mean, where we're at now with Facebook is I have to pay for the people that have liked my page to see my stuff. It doesn't just happen by accident. And Spirit won't do that for you. They can't hack a human algorithm computer system yet, but there's still hope, guys. We've all seen The Matrix. We know what's possible. Now, here's one of the things that is really important. There are legalities that you need to think of, ethical considerations and legal considerations. Now, here's one I found the other day when I looked it up because I got my bee in the bonnet about something. Because to tell you what one of my pet hates is people that say, mediums that say they read for celebrities. What? Because they've been on a reality TV show, they're a better person than us? I don't. How can you be spiritual and say that you are working with the spirit world and then elevate somebody above everybody else because they've been on the telly box? Am I wrong? It just seems really counter spirit world to me. I don't get it. Anyway, if you do write that, a person is allowed to contact you and ask you for the details of the celebrities that you have read for. So if you write celebrity medium, people are allowed to ask for evidence, and you are not allowed to say, it's all right, I've got an NDA, I can't tell you because I'd be sued, and hold yourself under that. If you've got an NDA and the only celebrities that you've worked with have made you sign NDAs, you are not allowed to advertise yourself as a celebrity medium. Why would you want to anyway? But I just think that's really interesting. Also in the UK, any claims about healing have to make it clear that it's spiritual healing. So you're not allowed to say, make claims basically. You can say can help with, but you're not allowed to say will help with. So that's always an interesting one to try and pick your way through. So make sure you look things up. Make sure you look. I mean, in the UK, we are not allowed to read about law, we are not allowed to read about health, we are not allowed to read about, pregnancy. We're not allowed to read about pregnancy in the UK. So that's why if you listen to my interview with Kimberly Meredith, the medical medium, I had to put the disclaimer at the beginning because I was trying to work my way through. I want to share everybody's message, not just ones that I necessarily think are that I necessarily completely agree with. I think it's really important that we all understand that we can all take something from everybody, whether we agree with their work or not. And I'm not saying that I don't agree with her. I'm just saying in the UK, I have to be careful with what I share and how I share it. So there's considerations like that. Now, price. Let's talk about price and earning money, because this is always difficult. And I've talked about this before for any truly spiritual person. How can I possibly charge for something that's a gift? For me, I have to find the balance in it. I don't think that people shouldn't pay me. I don't think I should work for free. I've spent a lot of money to get myself to the standard of mediumship that I've got. I have to pay insurance and website hosting. I have to pay for podcast hosting. I have to pay for Canva to create my images. I have to pay for there's just so many costs associated with having a business that I think it's important to charge. And I think it's important to charge well. And some of you will know I put my prices up recently, and I had real resistance to that. And my lovely friend Amanda had to sort of talk me through it and help me. She's a manifesting genius. But again, she understands that you have to put the work in. You can't just go, I wish I was earning more and charge less. On the flip side of that, I do try and do free readings for people. I do work in churches a couple of times a year and take no payment for that. I do that just for the joy and to support the churches. So you have to find your space. This podcast is free. You have to find what works for you. So I'm not saying it should all be about the money, honey, and what you charge, but there needs to be a ebb and flow to it. And things that I think are important when you're starting out is you'll want to charge less than everybody else because you haven't got as much experience. But then by doing that, you're devaluing your own work, and you're going to attract clients to you who don't value your work in the same way. One of the things that I've found out that has completely blown my mind is that putting my prices up actually attracted a better caliber of sitter for me. So everybody I have worked with in the last few weeks has been engaged. Most of you listen to the podcast. Hey girls, hey. You know me, you know my style of mediumship, you want to work with me, because when I was charging less, what I would get is people who wanted a reading but didn't necessarily want a reading from me. So there's a balance in there. And when you're building up, I remember building up and asking to sell on my reading spaces when I was, when I built up my battery and I was doing quite well with it. And I did, but then I didn't specify that I wanted great clients who were engaged. I just said I wanted my spaces sold. And that was a lesson, because I had 2 weeks of people who just wanted future prediction readings, and to be told that their cheating scumbag ex was going to come back to them, and it was so destroying. But what an important lesson for me. It isn't actually about getting the money. I want to work with people that want to do the work. I want to work with people who want to be inspired. I want to work with people who are open, who are interested in collaborating. And I've got an example of this from one of my readings recently, so I'm not going to say who it was in case they would rather I didn't. But hi E, you booked with me and I got your mother-in-law through. And your mother-in-law, I was receiving that, because we always know it's like energetic charades, isn't it? I was receiving information like she'd left our house in a mess. That's how I was understanding it. She'd left behind a mess that people were trying to sort through. Now, because E listens to this podcast and is open and was collaborating with me in the spirit world to make the reading good, E said, no, not her house. It's something to do with her will. And then I was able to get information and evidence to prove that that's what she was talking about. But I wouldn't have been able to go there the same way if E was one of those people who just went, no, don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong, and didn't open up to it. So the only reason we were able to go there, and that was a very healing story. It was very healing. The lady had died very quickly, and she'd changed her will in like a fit of pique when she was angry several years before. And she kept thinking, I need to change it back. But she hadn't. And as a result, her son had not received anything from her estate, and his sister was refusing to share it. And what the mother-in-law wanted to say was, I didn't mean for this to happen, and I'm sorry. And there was lots of amazing stuff in it, there really was. But I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, and I'm not saying that spirit wouldn't have found another way to get that information through me. But because E was just open and said there was a mess left behind, but it's not a physical one, I was able to pick through it and understand it better. And then we got the good evidence, and then we got the good stuff. So for me, putting my prices up has meant that I get people that are of a particular caliber who are ready and willing and engaging, and then we get the great work and the great experiences. So take from that what you will. Now, I said this earlier, being unique, and I do still stand by this. It has to be you. When we first start, we kind of hide. We hide behind other people's, more established people, more knowing people. And one of the best things that you can do is share your truth, your experiences, your journey with people. That's what people want. People buy from people. And it's so important. When when they were obviously preparing me for this podcast, what Spirit started doing was channeling stuff through me. I did a post once about the trees in the woods, and that all came from Spirit. They would give me inspirational messages and things to share on my page that came directly from them, channeled from them to people to inspire and guide and hopefully put a spark in them. But I used to fall into that trap of sharing other people's stuff. Oh my goodness, it's Deepak Chopra. He knows so much more than me. And he does. Don't get me wrong. He really does. But if you wanted Deepak Chopra, you'd be on Deepak Chopra's page. I'm going to try not to keep saying that. I keep worrying I'm going to mess it up. You need to be sharing your own voice, your own experiences, because that's what people need. What have I written here? People will copy you. Deal with it. Oh my God, such a big lesson for me when one of my students, who I felt a real friendship and connection to, set up her own spiritual business 15 minutes away from my house. She broke my heart. She didn't tell me she was doing it. She just did it, made a copy, literally copied everything I was doing. I started demonstrating in hotels. She started booking hotels. It was hilarious. Now, at the time, it was really painful to me and really triggering to me. But when I was writing down the notes for this podcast, I realised that I hadn't thought about it for ages. Like, I'm completely over it. And that's so fascinating to me. So I needed that lesson from her, and I'm grateful for those lessons from her. And, people copy me all the time. And I see that, and that's okay. Because is any of this really real? It's, if you're working with the spirit world, who am I to say that it's my idea and not Spirit's idea? And if it's Spirit's idea, it doesn't belong to me, does it? So you have to kind of get yourself into that blasé state and don't hold back on your... One of the biggest things for me has been not holding back. On this podcast is a perfect example. When I first started doing it, I was almost scared to tell the whole story in case I didn't have anything to talk about next week. What if I run out of juice? What if I run out of inspiration? And one of the biggest things I've learned from doing this podcast in the last 2 years has been the more you give, the more you get. It's just like that Magic Penny song. Love is something if you give it away. You know the one, you're going to have it in your head. Give it away, give it away. You end up getting more. I won't carry on. But you're welcome. So it is that kind of thing. You give away the knowledge, more knowledge comes. I've developed so much more from doing this podcast once I started giving it freely, rather than holding stuff to my chest and going, I can't give that. I can't do this. So don't worry about people copying, because you're in your lane and you're getting inspired and you're getting your stuff, and more will come. And sometimes you need to say no. That's been such a hard lesson for me. I'm such a people pleaser. Sometimes you need to say no. Students have been a really great example of that for me. When I set up my circles and I wanted people with me, and then you would end up with these people with really toxic energy in your groups, you have to bin them off. Your job is not to heal them and hold them and coddle them into a place of unconditional love. Your job is to protect the other members of your group. A perfect example of that is a girl who came to my circle, years ago, and she started off telling everyone that she was really anxious and she had real social anxiety. And then when she moved past that, she became a real know-it-all, sassy, moving her head from side to side kind of energy. And she paired up with this other girl in the group, and they used to whisper to each other when other people were reading. Can you imagine trying to do your first ever reading in a group setting and somebody going while you're trying to work? Like, arsehole. And still, I didn't manage that the way that I should have. So Spirit had to push it. And then one day she told us all, after like 3 months in a group, that she had set up her own business doing readings. And I was like, what? Oh, what? It's been 3 months. We meet every 2 weeks. You're 6 sessions in. Are you kidding me? Anyway, so we got out these cards, and I loved these cards. And her card was prayer, and it had a jug of lemon water on the picture, and it was yellow. I remember it really well. And she couldn't get anything. And rather than going, oh, this is, I can't get anything for this card, she went, well, it's not my problem. It's your teaching and this shit card deck. That's what she said to me, which did push me to the limit of getting rid of her. But it was such a lesson to me in that kind of self-flagellation, healing spiritual thing. If somebody is a toxic energy around you, whether that is a client or a student, you don't have to work with that. You are allowed to say no. Your job as someone for the spirit world is to hold unconditional love. Yes, you can hold unconditional love for yourself and for others, but it's not to allow them in to that sacred space. I had a lady I had to get rid of who was really rude to somebody. it's just amazing the stuff that you get. And clients is another one. I may have mentioned this before, but I had a lady contact me on Facebook who very sadly, very, very sadly, had been told that she was dying. Now that's awful. That's really, really awful. She was only young, I get that. And she messaged me and said, I've had a reading from another medium and they couldn't get anything from me, so they gave me a refund. So I don't think I should have to pay you, which is kind of really illogical there. I would like a free one because I'm dying. And my people pleasing kicked in and I was like, this is my duty, this is my job. And then Spirit said to me, no, look, she's not ready for a reading. She's already had a medium not be able to do a spirit link for her. You won't be able to do it either. You're just going to put yourself in a horrible situation. So I told her that I was too busy, which was true, that I was fully booked, which was true. And then I shared a stupid meme or something on my Facebook page. And then she commented saying, funny how you've got time to do this, but you haven't got time to do a reading for somebody who's dying. And she put another comment on and another comment on, and eventually I had to sort of do a big long explanation to her of how energy works, and that I'd done my readings for the day and I was exhausted, but it doesn't cost me any of my when you've got no spiritual connection energy left, you've still got energy left to be able to post a meme on Facebook because it made you chuckle. And then she was like, oh, right, okay, sorry, no one's ever explained it to me before. But there was that real entitled energy from her. And I just thought, I don't ever want to work with you. And I'm sorry for her situation and I'm compassionate for where she's at, but she is not ready for a reading. And I don't want to be putting myself in a situation where it damages me because she's not ready. And sometimes you need to say no to events. This is something that I learned. For me, for example, I learned that I don't like doing parties. Now, some of my mediumistic friends have very profitable, very fun, enjoyable jobs where they go to parties and they have an absolute blast and they love it. It's really great for building your spiritual business because obviously if you've got 8 people, that's, a collection of people for you to work with to hear about you. All you need is one person to bring their friends and you've suddenly reached a lot more people. That said, for me, it's just not for me because I have a lot of imposter syndrome to deal with. And what I found was happening was after I'd read for the first person, they would go back in the room and I'd be reading for the second, but I'd be trying to also listen to what the first person was saying to everybody else about whether they thought I was any good or not. And I realised that was not a space that I could work in because I was in ego, I wasn't in spirit. So sometimes you need to find things that don't quite work for you. And find things that do. And the only way to do that is to experience it and try it. So when you're starting your spiritual business, it's really important not to decide it's going to be a certain way. What you need to do is allow yourself to experiment, find what works for you and what doesn't. And the only way to find that is to do it, to sit with it and process it, which again is why you don't want to take on too many clients at once, because you need time to process what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's happening, what's working for you, so that you can expand and grow. So there we go. There's some lessons learned in business. As always, I'm sure that when I'm lying in bed later, I'll think of 37 more that I should have said, but we're way over time anyway. I hope this is of help to you. And as always, if you've got questions, email me, podcast@hannahmedium.co.uk. Have a great day.